If you struggle with shyness or social anxiety, check out our free No BS training course with actual useful advice you can do from home. None of that just get out there nonsense. The link is in the description below. For now, let's get to today's question.
The question, if a natural-born psychopath is raised in an environment primed for social anxiety, will any develop? This question is unanswerable with any degree of certainty. We do not know what biological characteristics, let alone brain structure, a natural-born psychopath might have. There are no consistent markers or neural correlates that have been found to define psychopathy. We also do not know what primes people for social anxiety for certain. We know that there seem to be risk factors, but precisely how you would organize the environment to promote what has been categorized as social anxiety, if such a category is even valid or reliable, would be a head-scratcher in the first place. The relationship between genes and our environments is massively complex. Most people think of genes as fixed objects that code for individual proteins, and that these build the bodies and brains, which in turn allow our minds to emerge. And furthermore, if there is a flaw in the gene, that this can predict a mood or anxiety disorder, or even psychopathy. But this is not the case. A gene is the area of a chromosome that houses a strand of DNA. DNA is copied onto another nucleic acid, RNA, which then provides a template for the production of a protein. But there's so much more. Genes are actually constructed out of splicing and editing parts of DNA that were once seen as redundant. These are also present in the cell. These spliced parts can jump to other regions of the chromosome. This jumping was once thought to be uncommon, but it is becoming increasingly evident that it is very common. Our genes are shifting and altering the proteins they code for as they respond to their cell environments. The cells are exposed to environments beyond their walls, crammed with inhibitory and excitatory biochemicals and neural potentials. These are linked throughout our bodies to our senses and our central nervous system, all of which is trying to predict what should be happening next to maintain our internal state within acceptable parameters. In short, we do not ever endure anything like a fixed state, ever. Now, accepting this dizzying complexity, and justice to it I have not done, it is impossible to discover what triggers what, when and under what conditions. We simply have little to no idea. The DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, might lead you to believe otherwise. The shopping catalog for mental disorders and the hierarchy of accompanying medications is a towering testament to the protected assumption that biology will at some time in the future betray its genes, or physiological markers that will signify the presence of each of its hundreds of individual mental disorders. Despite billions of desperate dollars, no gene or genes have been found that will then go on to be found in repeat studies elsewhere. Some are implicated, but that is as good as it gets. The first studies are always trumpeted when they get a positive result. They are news. But the subsequent failure aren't sexy, and so are ignored even by the academic journals, and the whole thing deflates again. There has not been a significant and satisfying physiological explanation for a dispositional disorder since syphilis was found over 100 years ago. The categories overlap, are not discretely separated into unmistakable disorders, and all sorts of comorbidities further buzz up the picture. We are forced to encounter the individual as a unique configuration of lived experience as a response to their story and their present circumstances if we are to really cooperate in alleviating distress from fear or sadness or numbness or catatonia or lack of empathy. We also have problem with our labels. Psychopathy and social anxiety exist as ideas of human behavior, and judged to be present or absent according to a list of subjective criteria. As time goes on and we engage with the individual characteristics of each person who might be adjudged to qualify for such labels, the diagnosticians are forced to subdivide, and subdivide again, thereby creating a whole raft of other labels. For instance, dysthymia is almost major depression, but not quite. Reliability studies have shown that the DSM categories are profoundly unreliable when multiple. Highly trained diagnosticians are asked for diagnoses based on exactly the same case studies. The other thing to consider is this. If you prime a gun, it is likely that when you pull the trigger it will go off with a probability of close to 1. We know that genetic factors can be left sleeping until a critical point and then triggered into expression by environmental influences. In the world of anxiety, we think that there are risk factors for people to experience debilitating and obstructive levels of fear. However, some people defy the risk and others succumb to it in uniquely individual ways that diagnostic labels mask, making them look homogeneous. I have had clients whose needs have been systematically ignored in order to pursue a diagnosis that bore little or no relationship with their symptoms or their lived experience at all. I have seen how panic attacks have led to nausea and food refusal. This particular person was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, incarcerated in a psychiatric unit at 13 years of age and tubed daily to force-feed them, after having been fed until they vomited, and unsurprisingly emerged with post-traumatic stress, social and generalized anxiety, emetophobia, major depression and self-harm to try to control their inner torment. They were blamed for the failure of the treatment. The treatment became a contributory risk factor, as did the heart diagnosis. So your question is unanswerable. I didn't intend to write all of this. I hope you don't mind. Find more answers and a free audiobook on how to talk to anyone in the description below. No useless advice like just get out there. I mean actual useful advice from people who have really dealt with shyness and social anxiety and overcome it in their own lives.